Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloney. This is like Tell Your Story week. This is my third episode this week. I've been gone a bunch this summer, so I was cramming a bunch of my favorite people all in together. And tonight, I am thrilled to bring you another guest to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell yours. Each week, I bring you different guests who inspire, encourage, or challenge me in one way or another. This week, I am beyond thrilled to have one of my favorite people on the planet, Alice Lee. Alice, tell everybody a little bit about who you are.
Hi, everyone. Gosh, Todd, again, so honored to be here with you. I always call Todd my fancy friend. My name is Alice Lee. I am a principal in El Segundo, California. It's in Southern California. And I've been at my site now for about 5 years. I've been in my district for 8 years, an educator closer to 16, I believe. But yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
Well, and I got to give a shout out to Alice because she agreed to do this interview with me and she is on vacation. So she is doing this from hotel Wi-Fi. So we are all finger crossed praying like that the Wi-Fi holds up for us. So Alice, I want to start a little bit about your history. So, did you always want to be an educator or was that something you kind of just fell into?
That's a great question. No, I did not. I think that when I went into college, I'm Korean American, and so my paths of occupations was either a pharmacist or an attorney, and I'm neither. When I went into college, I said, I wanted to be a journalist, and so I studied communications at UCLA. Yeah, I don't know if you knew that. I studied journalism, loved it. But then while I was in college, I got an opportunity to go on a trip to Thailand on a missions trip, but it was also like a teaching trip. And so it was there. So part of our time was at an orphanage. And so we were with the orphans during the day or during the evenings. And then during the day, we would go and teach at the local elementary school and we would teach English there. And I think it was there, it kind of spurred up something like, I really love this. I love these children. And just the opportunity that I got as being their English teacher was very enlightening for me. And so when I came back to the States, I picked up a double major and then I started doing a liberal arts program on top of the communications major. And then after I graduated, it was kind of a Hail Mary. It was either I'm going to go to grad school at UCLA again for education, or I was going to get a job, doing marketing or doing something in the journalism field. And thankfully, I got an opportunity to go to grad school. Mm-hmm. And then I started teaching in the inner city for 4 years. And Todd, I'll tell you, it was so, I don't know, I want to call it heart work. Mm-hmm. Hard work, but hard work as well. Yes. And really changed my life. It was definitely not something that was going to make us, wealthy or anything, as my parents wanted maybe us to become later on. But yeah, no, I love education so much because I love what it can do for children and the access it provides. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's how I got into teaching.
So are you bilingual?
I'm sorry?
Are you bilingual?
I am bilingual. I speak Korean and English. Very little Spanish. And yeah, my Korean gets really good when I watch my Korean dramas. But when I'm not watching it or not listening to K-pop, my Korean's not so good.
My wife is the same way. My wife's bilingual. My mother-in-law speaks no English. And she's the same way. When she is watching the telenovelas or communicating out with her mom, her Spanish is great. But as soon as she's not using it a ton, she's like, I forgot that word. And I don't know how to do that. Yeah. And I'm like, but you grew up speaking this. And she's like, yeah, but if you don't use it all the time, you even lose it, even if you grew up speaking it.
So true. So true.
Go
ahead. Oh, no, it's funny because so I have 2 kids and my husband is trilingual. So he speaks Mandarin, Korean and English. Oh, cool. And so we're like, okay, we need to make sure that our kids are also at least bilingual. Mm-hmm. And no, I've kind of failed on that.
So y'all don't speak Korean or you obviously don't speak Mandarin at home because you don't speak Mandarin, but y'all don't speak Korean at home?
We do, only to talk about the kids. And they know we're talking about them when we're speaking in Korean. But, we went to Korea last year thinking that, okay, this is a great opportunity. They're going to sink or swim. No, everything in Korea is also translated into English. And so they figured it out real fast that if they just kind of stare long enough, that someone will translate something for them in English.
That's
so yeah, we're working on it.
So, are your parents immigrants, or were they born here as well?
Great. Yeah, no, my parents, so they're first generation Korean, well, they're first generation immigrants to this country. They came
Uh-huh.
here when they were 27, 28, I think.
Uh-huh.
And I was born in Korea and I came here when I was 3 months old, 3 months
Uh-huh.
old. And I think about it now and I think about their immigration story. And
Mhm.
I don't think I would have been able to go to another country and up and leave
And
my
start a whole new
comfort zone,
life.
right? And not knowing the language, not knowing the
Mhm.
culture, and just trying to start a new life in a completely different country is unfathomable for me.
Mhm.
So I think my parents are pretty courageous. But yeah, no, we've been here now almost 40 years.
Wow. Well, what I love about you too is how you are so proud of and passionate about your own heritage
Oh,
and looking at ways that you can even go back into Korea and more than just take your family there. I know you're also looking at ways to do like little things here or there professionally with helping Korean kids and things like that. Why is that such a, you grew up American, and
mhm.
so obviously everybody else who grows up American, and some of us that were all just like, well, this is all we know. And so why is that such a passionate route for you as well?
Okay, so the very superficial, very shallow reason is that I love Korean dramas and I love Korean food. I think I just I really like the culture and I really like the country and the
Mhm.
food. That's a very shallow reason. I think a deeper reason would be it didn't, it's part of who I am. And I think
Mhm.
growing up, I think I took it for granted. And
Mhm.
there are certain things that had happened. Maybe we'll get to later on today.
Mhm.
In what as I was growing up, that I didn't really take. I didn't take that much pride of being Korean. I did and I didn't. I think, but now, being an adult and also being a parent, I do find it really important to merge the two cultures, especially
Mhm.
as I raise my own kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I and it's part of who I am. It's part of my identity. And I
Mhm.
think I've definitely identify with both cultures, sometimes at the same time. Some at work, it's usually I feel like I'm more American than I am anything else. But I do have to realize that I can't hide who I am on my face,
Right.
right? Like I look
Mhm.
Asian and there's probably some things that I say or don't quite understand because of my Asian background. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know.
So
Yeah.
growing up, were there a lot of other Asian kids that you grew up around?
There were. So, I grew up in Torrance and there were a lot of Korean students there. Um, Yeah, there were. There were. I don't think I felt othered. And I think going to
Okay.
UCLA too, I didn't feel so othered.
Mhm.
But again, I grew up in the 90s. Well, my middle years were in the 90s. And I think the first time I did feel othered was
Mhm.
actually with the riots, the Los Angeles riots. Remember
Oh,
that?
yeah.
In
Mhm.
92. And the genesis of it was in Los Angeles. And my parents owned a liquor store.
Uh-huh.
And it was a little bit further away out of LA, but I think that was the first time where I personally had to feel like, what does this mean to be an Asian American in this larger context of Los Angeles and in the United States, and what does that mean to me as someone growing up in this, and
Mhm.
how do we deal with racism? I've never had to deal with racism so blatantly, I guess,
Right.
but our store was attacked during the riots, and
Mhm.
a lot of really deep questions that I
Mhm.
had to answer for myself. And I think I've come now to a conclusion where it's understanding. We have to get to know one another, and yeah, I hate to say like love is the answer, but really it's if you understand somebody else, because like our parents' store got or got looted, but I don't think it had anything to do other than the fact that they were Asian shop owners,
Mhm.
and it was very confusing growing up because it was like, why is this happening to us? And
Right.
yeah, wow.
Did your parents have your parents ever talked about that what they was like going that through that with them for them?
Mm, I think they were well, not really. You know what? That's a good question. I should probably ask them. I think they were worried because the riots were spreading outside of Los Angeles and it was hitting closer to where their store was located, and I know that my dad would patrol in the evenings, and the one night he didn't patrol. That was the night that our store was looted.
Really?
Um, But no, I think they were worried and angry. You know, it's kind of confusion. Probably the same thing in a more exponential way than what I had to go through, well, what I was understanding. But I think for my parents, it was a very confusing time for them as well. But they lost everything after that incident. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you think about your own experiences growing up, how do you use some of those when working with the students you work with now? Do you tell any pieces of those stories, or use your own background, your own experiences to say, "Hey, kids, I've been here. I've dealt with this. You're gonna make it." Like, do you bring any of that into your school with your students?
I don't think I bring up this particular incident because it's something that, again, it's kind of coming to the surface for me now, as you know, as I kind of hit into my late 30s, early 40s. Um, but yes, I mean, you know, my school is predominantly Caucasian, but you know, there are incidences, and the incidences that happen in terms of discipline that hurt me the most are the ones that have to do with race.
Right.
And that is when I can bring up some of my upbringing about, you know, like, I'm not white either, you know, and so why are we calling each other names like this? Why are we hurting each other? And really trying to get kids to understand who the person is and not what they look like on the outside, and really bringing in, you know, an element of understanding. I remember there was one incident actually where a student made an Asian remark, and I think she was making, one of my students was making fun of another student, and she kind of pulled back her eyes and she said, ching chong, and you know, she was brought down to my office, and I was like, so what does that mean? What does that, I don't know what that means. And she goes, I don't know. And it was a really uncomfortable conversation for that student, because I had to look at her and I was like, look, the kid that you just made fun of, she's Asian, I'm Asian too. So I'm kind of taking it personal. Like, what do you mean by that? And yeah, I think that was also a wake up call for the students. So really, I think, you know, as an administrator and as an educator, is to bring more elements of understanding for all kids. You know, we have to do better, especially in this climate. It's gotten a little bit more hostile. I don't know if it's, and it doesn't happen often. But, you know, I hear of other stories where I think people sometimes feel like not that it's allowed, but it's okay to say certain things, and it's not okay.
No, I know what you mean. As a principal in a school that is in a very rural area in Texas, but still has that kind of inner city feel sometimes, I've noticed over the last couple of years, there's a lot more. I'm not using this term in a positive way. There's a lot more bravery of kids being like, I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
Because, and me and all my years in education, I'm like, did you really just say that? Like, I've never heard a kid say that to another one in elementary. And they're either like, yeah, I saw this on the news, or my family said this at home. And I'm like, okay, no, we don't say things like that. Let's go educate ourselves or what that means, where it comes from. But there's a lot more just brazenness in kids today and I think that's why, you know, empathy is so important. And I know that you do a lot of that through your literacy work as well. Has literacy always been a passion of yours?
It has. I am a notorious children's book collector, and my books are all over my walls and everyone's shelves in my house. Actually, I wanted to talk about something like that too. So, you know, one of the stories, especially because I felt like there was a rise in the brazenness of what kids are saying to each other, and just kind of the perspective of not everyone, but again, like, even that one incident that pops up, it's so hurtful and it's so impactful. And for me, I can't sleep. And so there's this great book that Suzanne Kaufman is, Alexandria Penfold, they wrote this book called All Are Welcome.
Yes.
And it's a picture book, and it's about, basically, the illustrations are beautiful because it has kids of all colors and of all abilities, and the whole message is all are welcome here. And that was a story that I did as a whole school book club. So we do these biannual whole school book club. So every classroom and every student is exposed to the same story, kindergarten through 5th grade. And we read this story because I felt like, at least this is one way to address with literacy, that all are welcome here. It doesn't matter who you are, what you believe in, what you eat, we're all welcome here. And bigotry has no place at our schools. And that's where literacy, I think, is so powerful, because it's not just my voice, it's other people's voices that are affirming the things that you're already doing.
And there's so many neat ways you can use books to help kids see other perspectives and see that we're not telling you like this is great life stuff that you need to know. As a parent of kids who are of Asian descent as well, do you ever have those fears of them dealing with that kind of stuff at school? I mean, obviously as a school principal, you see these kind of things said to other kids, and
Yeah,
you know how it makes you feel. How does that relay onto your own children?
that's a great question. It hasn't happened yet.
Mhm.
Um, and God forbid it ever happened to them. Uh, you know, like race is a funny thing for me to bring up with my kids. And I brought it up with them a couple years ago because I didn't know if my own children understood that they were Asian. I think they knew that we speak Korean and that we eat Korean food. And, my mom likes to watch Korean dramas. But I remember like when we were studying Martin Luther King and during African History Month. And I asked my son, I was like, do you know what we are? If people in the past were so angry with, our Black neighbors, what are we? And he looked at himself and he's like, I'm white. And I looked at him, I was like, no, you're not. You're not. Don't go around saying that because you're not. And really having this honest dialogue a little bit about like, no, we're Asian. We're from Asia. We're from this large continent made up of multiple different countries. And we're different. And it's funny because I don't want to overly hype not hype, but I don't want to overly emphasize like we're so different. There's a notion of I want them to assimilate as well. But yeah, honestly, I think as a parent, I'm kind of navigating that with my kids.
Do you find now I've had this conversation with other people who are in the minority majority, and do you find that when people start having conversations about race or questions that they always turn to you and are asking you your opinion or your idea? And because I know sometimes when I talk to
Yeah.
people, they're like, I'm tired of everybody acting like I have to be the voice all the time because I'm in the minority majority. It's like we can all talk about this and have this conversation.
Absolutely. I think if it has to do with Asia, yes, I'll get like, what do you think, Alice? And I'll say, well, and I can give them my perspective, but I also want everyone to know, like, this is just my perspective. I'm one of millions of Asians who have different stories and different backgrounds and different takes on certain contexts or issues. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. We all belong in this conversation. It's not just one. And if you don't know, you ask, say, this is what I think, but I defer, or I would like to ask so-and-so to give their opinions.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the LA riots being really pivotal and a memory that you have. There's something you can think of, and it doesn't have to be a long time ago. It could be last year or 2 years ago. That is just a really impactful thing that helped you become the woman you are today.
Not connected to the riots, or
Whatever it is. If you look back and think this really had an impact over who I am today, what would one of those things be?
Oh my gosh, I should have this at the tip of my tongue, Todd.
This is a hard one. This is people always go, "Ooh, that's such a big question," because there's so many things that make us who we are. But sometimes you look back and think, this thing happened and it was wonderful, or it was terrible, or it just was in the middle, and it really helped shape me and my beliefs, who I am, what I stand for, whatever.
Oh God, that is such a big question. I'm going to regret what I say because I don't want to just answer whatever, answer flippantly. But if you ask for a book that's kind of shaped a lot of my thinking, my goodness. Okay, the first thing that comes to mind, I have to say Matilda. It has nothing to do with the riots actually either. But Matilda by Roald Dahl. And I think that's a book that comes immediately to mind because that was a book that I went to as an escape. When I was I think when it first, I don't know, when I was 7 or 8, I think I read that book over 20 times in a row. And it's a book that I would refer to often because here's this little girl who's highly precocious little kid, terrible parents. I had good parents, but terrible parents, crazy school, great teacher. And she loved books. So she would immerse herself in books and she would just kind of get lost in that. And I think for me, growing up, I just loved reading, and I really loved reading all different kinds of books. And I would like Matilda, I would read books, and I think I really yearned for that one teacher or that one connection where I can have that very close relationship with, and because no one else in the world mattered except for Miss Honey in this situation, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that completely answers your question. I'm gonna have to think
No,
about
that's a great answer though. I love that because I can think of the book series that got me to fall in love with reading, and it was an escape for a multitude of reasons, whether I saw myself in some of the characters or I didn't see myself at all, but I loved them. So I think that's great. Well, Alice, one question that I always love to end these conversations on is if there is one thing that you wish more people knew or understood, what would your one thing be?
just in general.
Hmm.
Just I would say speak the truth, but with love.
Oh,
I wish we could all do that more. And I say that for myself too. Let's be honest in our conversations. Let's be transparent. There's no purpose in hiding or, trying to circumvent an issue. Let's be truthful, but let's always speak it with love. And that's kind of been my motto as an administrator. I have that on my computer and I have that where I can see it. And that's something that I hope to live by. And all that I do is to speak truth with love.
I love that. Well, Alice, you are one of my favorite people.
Oh, I love you too.
I got to see your school last week and speak to some of your team. And so I think you are fantastic. And I'm so happy that I got to have you as a guest. And I'm so sorry it's during your vacation. I would have never agreed to this date if I would have. But thank you for making the time. You are incredible and amazing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Todd. Thank you. You're doing good work. Love what you do.
Thank you. And thank you for everybody for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out past episodes on iTunes, SoundCloud, or YouTube. And if you're going to check me out on iTunes, leave a review because I'd love to see what you think of the show. I hope you join me again next week with another incredible guest. And I hope tonight's story was encouraging to you so that you can get out there and be brave enough to tell your story because every story matters.
Yay!